Okay, so let's jump right in. One day, you open the news and see headlines about diplomatic progress. The very next day, you're reading about major military buildups. It's confusing, right? So what is really going on between the US and Iran? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain and show you how intelligence analysts cut through all that noise to read the real signals of war and peace.
And this, right here, is the central puzzle. On the one hand, you've got these reports coming out of Geneva saying there's some progress in the talks. But on the other hand, you have senior officials talking about a major buildup of military forces in the region. These two things seem to completely contradict each other. So how on earth does an analyst make sense of that?
To solve this puzzle, you can't just look at the headlines. You have to dig into the details on both sides of this equation. The real story you'll find isn't in one signal or the other, but in the tension between them.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. Let's look at the specifics. Diplomatically, sure, the talks are happening, but our sources are saying the two sides are still very apart. Meanwhile, on the military side, the US is very deliberately putting forces in place, aiming to be ready by mid-March. And at the exact same time, Iran is running its own naval drills, which is a textbook move to add pressure while you're at the negotiating table. So you've got three different things happening at once, all sending mixed signals. This is why we have to start decoding those military moves to figure out what they're really saying.
And that brings us to the core of this whole analysis. See, it's not enough to just know that military hardware is on the move. You have to understand what those specific pieces of equipment actually mean in the language of military planning.
First up, the tankers. The easiest way to think about a KC-46 is as a flying gas station. Its whole job is to refuel other airplanes, right in midair. Now, why does that matter? Because without these tankers, fighter jets and spy planes have a really short leash. They can't fly far or stick around for very long. So when you see a lot of them moving into an area, that's a huge signal.
Okay, next up, the E-3 AWACS. So if the tanker is the gas station, this plane is the air traffic control tower. That giant rotating dome on top, it's a ridiculously powerful radar that can manage the entire battlefield from the sky, telling friendly planes where to go and tracking every single potential threat. You just don't send one of these up unless you expect the skies to get very, very busy or very dangerous.
And finally, you've got the big cargo planes, the C-17s and C-5s. You can think of these as the plumbing of a military operation. They carry literally everything else: the bombs, the missiles, the spare parts, the troops, all the gear. Without this logistical backbone, none of those fancy jets can do their job. So a steady stream of these planes means someone is stocking the shelves for something big.
So, and this is the crucial point. When you see this trio together, the tankers, the AWACS, and the heavy airlift, all moving in a coordinated way, it doesn't automatically mean a decision for war has been made. What it does mean, and this is so important, is that leaders are building themselves the option to act. They're putting all the pieces on the chessboard so that, if they choose to, they can make a move and make it fast.
Now you might be thinking this is all just educated guesswork, but it's not. Analysts use a really structured framework to turn all these signals into a concrete, objective assessment. It's a way to take emotion out of a very tense situation.
And this is basically what it looks like. It's called a strike window probability model. And you can see here, analysts are tracking 8 key inputs. Things like how many tankers are in the area, the E-3 count, the flow of those cargo planes, and, importantly, they're also tracking the diplomatic signals. Every piece of this complicated puzzle gets a number.
And the process itself is pretty simple. First, you score each of those 8 indicators on a scale from 0 to 2. Then, you just add up the points for a total score out of 16. And finally, that number gets converted into a simple risk level: green, yellow, orange, or red. It's a system designed to turn a whole lot of messy data into a single, clear signal.
Okay, so that's the model. Now for the interesting part. Let's actually apply it to everything we're seeing on the ground, in the air, and at the negotiating table right now.
So let's just ask the question straight up. We've seen this coordinated movement of 3 KC-46 tankers, plus all the other activity we've talked about. So based on the model, what is the actual probability of a military strike happening in the next 7 days?
The assessment comes out to between 40 and 55%. Now, in the language of the model, that puts us right on the borderline between orange and red. So no, it's not a certainty, not by a long shot. But the risk is no longer just routine. It is elevated and it is significant.
But the number alone isn't the whole story. The context here is everything. This military posture is perfectly consistent with something called strategic deterrence signaling. It's a really high-stakes way of saying to your opponent, look, we want to talk, but do not mistake our willingness to negotiate for an inability to act. It's flexing.
And this right here brings us to the single most important takeaway from this entire breakdown. It's a distinction that can mean the difference between panic and simple preparedness.
Let's be crystal clear about this. What this activity is building options. It's about increasing flexibility for decision makers. It is absolutely about sending a strong signal. What this is not, at least not yet, is proof of an imminent strike. It is not a confirmed decision to act. The capability is being put in place, but that final political decision, that may not have been made at all.
So now you have a peek into the analyst's playbook. You know the difference between building an option and actually executing one. You know to watch the tankers, the AWACS, and the diplomatic channels. So the question I'll leave you with is this. Knowing what you know now, what signals will you be watching for tomorrow?